All right, these are your 2.9 notes. We're going to talk about compound inequalities. A compound sentence is when we take two sentences and put them together. So a compound inequality is when I take two inequalities, remember, less than, greater than, less than, equal to, greater than, equal to, and put them together. So the definition of a compound inequality are two inequalities joined together with an and, or. All right. So right now we're going to focus on the or inequalities. When I graph two or inequalities, they're going to go apart from each other, which means you'll have a circle and a line going that way, and a circle and a line going that way. So let's graph this. X is less than or equal to -2. That's a solid circle going that way. Or X is greater than 3. That's an open circle going that way. Easy peasy. They're always going to go opposite each other. Almost always. Now we need to write interval notation for this. I'm going to get out my lightsaber. Actually, before I do that, let's remember that if it is, with my interval notation, if it is a solid circle, it's going to be with brackets. If it's an open circle, it's going to be with parentheses. It'll be with parentheses if it's an open circle. And remember, if it's an infinity sign or a negative infinity, it's always going to have parentheses around that. So when I read this, I get my lightsaber out. The first thing I come to is this arrow that's pointing to negative infinity. So I'm going to write parenthesis, negative infinity, comma. The next thing my lightsaber comes to is the solid -2. So I write a -2. We use a bracket because it's solid. Then I have this open space right in here. So I write, to represent that space, I write the word or. Okay, lightsaber. The next thing I come to is this open circle with the 3. So that means I say parenthesis 3. And the last thing I come to is the arrow that's pointing to infinity. And I always close an infinity with a parenthesis. All right. So if I were to solve this, I would get, let's add 4. So this one is going to be x is less than -3. So that would be open circle on -3 going that way. I'm going to divide. And in this one, I don't do this, but remember, if you divide a negative, you have to, or multiply, you have to flip over your inequality sign. This would be a solid circle on 6, and it would go that way. So let's write our notation. It's always going to start with this negative infinity, and it's always going to end with a positive infinity with parentheses. We just have to figure out the middle part. So negative infinity, open circle -3, so that'd be -3 parenthesis, or the next thing I come to is a closed circle 6. So bracket 6 and then infinity. All right, I'm going to write down the inequalities for 2, 3, 4, and then all I want you to do is graph it and write your interval notation. For number 5, I want you to solve and graph and write the notation. So I'm going to pause it for 1 sec. So for number 2, I wrote the information. I need you to graph it and write the interval notation. Number 3, graph, write the interval notation. Number 4, graph it, write the interval notation. Number 5, you need to solve them first, then you need to graph them, and then you need to write the interval notation. When you're done with that, flip it over to the back side, and we just have a few more notes to take. So on the front side, we were talking about ors, and now on the back side, we're going to talk about ands. ors always go together. Oh, sorry, ors always go apart from each other, ands always graph together. So it'll be a circle with the line connecting it with the circle. All right? So if I need to graph 6 is greater than negative, x is greater or equal to negative 6. Solid circle. It's going to go that way. X is less than or equal to 1. It's going to be a solid circle, and it's going to go that way. So I'm just going to connect them. Okay? When I write this in interval notation, it's actually really easy, much easier than the other side. Because first I come to a negative 6. These are solid circles, so I'm going to use a bracket. Then I come to a 1, and it's a solid circle, so I'm going to use a bracket. And that's all the interval notation is for that. On the other side, we had to write 2 separate with an or in the middle. On this side, we just write it like this. Because the solution to an and inequality falls between 2 endpoints, they're frequently written in a condensed form. So instead of having to write x is greater than or equal to negative 6 and x is less than or equal to 1, instead of writing it all out like that, I'm going to write my negative 6, I'm going to write my 1, I'm going to put an and, I'm going to put an x in the middle, and it's always going to be less than or equal to. So when we have ands and we write it condensed, it's always less than or equal to. So do the stuff on the front, take these notes, show me your work, you're done.